Indeed, something is not right. Dustin's expression turned grave. On closer inspection, it seemed that Cinna had not only been injured physically. There was also a seal on him, causing damage to his body. The seal was strong and hidden, and any external energy that entered the body would be repelled. It was no surprise that Brooke couldn't do much and that Cinna hadn't woken up. The situation was more complicated than he thought. "Young man, don't push yourself too hard. Cinna may never wake up," Brooke sighed. "Dr. Bush, you're wrong. Mr. Schaffer will wake up because I can cure him." Dustin's statement was bold. "What did you say? You can cure him?" Brooke looked at him in disbelief. "Kid, you aren't kidding me here, are you? I've spent the last 10 years researching Cinna's condition and finding no answers. You're telling me that you can cure him?" He could not believe that a young man in his 20s could solve a mysterious illness he couldn't even diagnose. "It's not easy, but I can cure Mr. Schaffer," Dustin said earnestly. "And I need your help, too. Kid, if you can really cure Cinna, I'd sell Harmony Healers in a heartbeat," Brooke sighed. Then he asked, "Why do you think you can do it?" Brooke just met Dustin, so he had to be cautious. He could not make a rash decision since Cinna's life was at stake. "Well, you mentioned that Mr. Schaffer has some residual energy in him. If I remove the energy, would that prove I can heal him?" Dustin asked. Brooke's gaze sharpened. "That energy is very strong, and regular medical skills won't work. Don't make any empty promises. If it were that easy, Brooke would have already gotten rid of it sooner. I can't do it with regular medical skills, but I can with esoteric technique," Dustin explained earnestly. "Dr. Bush, give me half an hour. I'll be able to remove this energy. You'll see." Brooke hesitated, his brows furrowing. He was not sure if he could trust Dustin. Dustin was too young, and his motives were unclear. "Look, Dr. Bush. Mr. Schaffer has been suffering for the past 10 years, and we're running out of time. If you have no other options, why don't you let me try?" Dustin insisted. After thinking for a moment, Brooke reluctantly agreed, as Cinna's life was on the line. "Okay, you can try, but his safety is our top priority. Mr. Schaffer has been very kind to me, and I won't put him at risk," Dustin assured. "Very well," Brooke said, stepping aside. He knew he shouldn't have trusted Dustin, but the man's confidence had convinced him. He could not help but think that a miracle might happen. With Brooke's consent, Dustin focused intensely. He took a silver needle and sealed the 8 vital meridians in Cinna's body to protect him from potential energy disruptions. He also gave a cardium to protect Cinna's heart and prevent unexpected problems. Once he was all set up, Dustin began the healing process. Cinna had a seal inside his body that was an ancient, dark, and sinister occult spell called the Ethereal Soul Seal. It was used to hurt people. Once it was cast, the spellcaster could control the victim's life remotely. It was a difficult spell to set up and even harder to break. The person removing the seal needed to be more powerful than the spellcaster, and they needed to be skilled at occult arts. Not anyone could just break this seal. 10 years ago, Dustin would not have been able to break the seal. But now, he was halfway to becoming a Grandmaster. It was no longer a challenge. The only concern was the fragile state of Cinna, which could not withstand the side effects. Dustin had to be extremely careful and prioritize Cinna's safety. He took a deep breath and gently placed his hands on Cinna's chest. Dustin gathered his mystical pure energy, gradually flowing it into Cinna's circulatory pathways. Cinna's heart sped up as a sudden surge of true energy clashed against Dustin's pure energy. As their energies collided, Cinna twitched as if he had been electrified. Dustin frowned and directed his pure energy to drain the Ethereal Soul Seal's energy slowly. He couldn't risk overpowering the seal's power in one go. The seal's power was violent, like a beast, ready to devour any intruders. As he continued to drain the seal's energy, he replaced it with his true energy until the seal weakened. As time passed, Dustin continued to channel his true energy into Cinna. His forehead began to sweat, and his face went pale. He was drained and exhausted. Normally, this would have been manageable. But Dustin had to protect Cinna as he drained the seal's power, making it twice as exhausting. Cinna's heartbeat quickened as his face flushed. He perspired when his head emitted a white mist. Brooke watched anxiously, not wanting to disturb Dustin, and could only worry from a distance. "This is really tough," Dustin groaned. His true energy was almost depleted, and he knew he had to drain the ethereal soul seal's energy before that happened. Suddenly, the celestial pearl hanging on his chest spun rapidly. It released waves of energy that replenished his core and energy. "Perfect timing," Dustin exclaimed in relief. The celestial pearl, a sacred relic in the martial world, had come through in time. With his energy replenished, the true energy grew stronger. After a while, the ethereal soul seal had reached its limit and weakened. Taking the chance, Dustin directed his mystic pure energy to absorb the remaining seal's energy. Then, he channeled his energy upward, aiming for the seal's core. Sensing the impending threat, the ethereal soul seal attacked Sinner's circulatory pathways. His heart raced again. His nose began to bleed, and he convulsed uncontrollably. Oh, no! Dustin realized that Sinner's life was at risk. If Dustin did not break the seal at once, Sinner would not be able to survive. "We can't wait any longer." Dustin took a deep breath, withdrew his hand, and placed his finger firmly on Sinner's chest. He released all his energy and yelled, "Break!" When Dustin's finger touched Sinner's chest, he trembled. Blood gushed out of his mouth and nose as his circulatory pathways shattered. His weakened body was in danger, and his life hung on by a thread. The ethereal soul seal immediately crumbled beneath Dustin's finger. "Sinner." Brooke was pale and trembling. He rushed forward to check Sinner's condition. After Brooke was sure Sinner was alive, he regained his composure. "Dustin, I warned you not to be reckless. Do you know you nearly killed Sinner?" He scolded Dustin relentlessly. Dustin collapsed back on the chair, gasping for breath and sweating profusely. After catching his breath, he said slowly, "The situation was more complicated than I expected. Despite the risks I took, I successfully neutralized Mr. Schaffer's true energy." Neutralized? Brooke was taken aback and immediately checked Sinner's pulse. Although his vitals were weak, the violent energy was gone. "Is it neutralized? How is that possible?" Brooke was surprised but delighted. He had spent 10 years trying to treat this strange ailment, yet this young man in his 20s managed to neutralize it. Brooke swallowed hard. He couldn't believe it, so he examined Sinner again. The energy was really neutralized, and Sinner was freed from his suffering. Brooke had to admit although Dustin was a master at the occult, he still had remarkable skills at this young age. "Kid, I must say I'm impressed by your healing skills. You even went to great lengths to save Sinner." "I'm eternally grateful," Brooke said, his face filled with respect. Brooke thanked Dustin respectfully. If he had doubted Dustin before, he trusted him now. There was no doubt that Dustin was a good and selfless man. Dustin dismissed Brooke's comment with a wave of his hand. "Don't mention it, Dr. Bush. Mr. Schaffer saved my life once. I was just returning the favor." He continued, "So, are you two friends?" Brooke smiled and said, 12 years ago, my entire family was hunted down and nearly destroyed by our enemies. Sinner came to our rescue and saved us. I owe him my life. Dr. Bush, you have been devoted to Mr. Schaffer for 10 years, and you have already repaid what was owed to him," Dustin said. "I cannot repay such a huge debt. Unfortunately, my medical skills are not as good as yours. I am ashamed that I failed to treat Sinner." Brooke shook his head in sorrow. "Dustin, you saved his life with your miraculous techniques. You are truly impressive." Dustin turned serious and said, "But, it's too soon to say I've saved him. I have neutralized the true energy inside Mr. Schaffer, but his body has been severely damaged. His 8 vital meridians are seriously injured. He's like a living corpse right now. We must restore his circulatory pathways and rejuvenate his body for him to wake up." "Restoring his circulatory pathways and rejuvenating his body?" Brooke inquired, furrowing his brow.